Okay, now we're moving on to our panel discussion. So obviously I'm going to be calling our panels. If they can come up to the stage, please, I'd appreciate that. The Banking Association of South Africa, accelerating affordable housing, a banking sector perspective. Our moderator, Julie Domini, General Manager, Public Policy, Banking Association of South Africa. Where are you, Julie? Are you going to come join us? Have you all mic'd up? Are you all ready? You can start making your way to the front. Then we've got our panelist, Marissa de Koker. She's the head of Affordable Housing and Partners at Standard Bank. Marissa. And Mayua Balantulo, head of Affordable Housing Nedbank. And Sekela Mkhize, provincial head, Business Bank, Capitec. Dr. Simpiwe Patrick Madikizela, head of Client Experience Growth, head Middle Market Aspire FNB, and Zaida Manuel, Portfolio Manager, Home Loans ABSA. Right, so over to you. You're going to take it from here. Julie?
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to the Banking Association, and here is our experts in property finance, and of course, money, hey? So I think you'll be more excited to listen to this one more than anybody else. Whether we're giving money or not, it will depend how you guys react, eh? So that's very, very important. But we are here as the front, Banking Association South Africa, and we represent the financial sector in South Africa. This time focus is only on property. We represent the financial sector in many facets. This time is property. And we are dealing more also in the affordable housing space. I know that there's a bit of confusion in terms of how it is defined, but income has been used largely as a definition for that. So we all have our definitions. I think also the lady from MSCI spoke about this different affordable housings. In Sandton is different, and also in the township is different. So that still remains debatable, but I think in mind we know which market we're looking at. So in this sector, as you can see, the NHFC has actually made a presentation on how they assist this sector, because it is a very, very high, it has got high barriers to entry. And yet, just one of my colleagues has reminded me that in Maslow's law, it is a basic need. We all need to have a place to stay.
It's my LinkedIn. Oh.
Somebody's talking to me. All right, okay. So here, as the banks, we want to look at, firstly, how can we accelerate? And we believe it's not government's responsibilities only. Private sector has to play a lot of space, a lot of part in this. And clearly, if you look at the lower you go in the income level, government has to play even a major role, has even to lead. But then we're asking ourselves, we have some ideas. I'll ask the panel as well. And you're welcome now and then to interject and ask questions. I will pause in between to ask questions. How do we actually accelerate the supply for affordable housing, meet the need? John Luce actually made a presentation together with Edwin Rod just now, that gap keeps on increasing, and the support from government keeps on decreasing. That is as a percentage of budget, of GDP. So the picture doesn't look good, but we have a lot to do. So firstly, I would like to introduce my panel. They will introduce themselves one by one, what role they play in their organization. So please arrange that their mics are on, please. I'm going to start on my right. Introduce yourself and what your role is in your organization, and you proceed. Then we start with the questions.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gilly. So I'm Marissa de Quirker, working for Standard Bank. I head up the affordable housing space and also strategically manage the attorney relationships. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mivoyo Balintulo. I head up affordable housing at NatBank from an end-user finance perspective.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Zaida Manuel. I am a portfolio manager for Home Loans ABSA, and affordable housing is one of my segments that we play a role in. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm from Capitec Bank, representing Capitec Business Bank, which is one of the newest players in the industry. Obviously, we are also looking at options of supporting our clients around affordable housing, which is a project I look after.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone. I'm Dr. Simpiwe Patrick Matikizela from FNB. I'm the executive in charge for client experience across all our income subsegments, from the lower to the highest income subsegment. That's one portfolio I look after. Additionally, I'm double-heading. I'm also the growth head for what we call middle income subsegment. That's people who are earning between 240,000 per annum to 600,000 per annum. So that's squarely in the affordable housing market. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So you see, we have brought our best foot forward for this session. So please listen attentively. And I'm not done with my introduction. Amongst ourselves, I didn't tell my line managers, it's a problem, I'm going to get fired. But we have the MD for BASA, Banking Association, South Africa, who has joined us. Sisbongi, maybe she's raising her hand. You can see her, she's here. That's how seriously the financial sector is taking. Ezanli, that is in Swahili. Thank you very much. So let us start now. With these challenges that we have, I have a question for one of the panelists that we face in affordable housing. And generally, it's a housing problem. We are not able to deliver the number of units that we require to meet the demand. Dr. Matikizela, maybe you can help us with a few ideas in terms of where do you see private sector playing? Where do you see specifically the financial sector playing? And also the state in this. Please, you can touch it many aspects, partnership, delivery, service assurance, etc. But we are all ears.
Yes. No.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone once again. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. So very quickly, because it's a broad subject, we'll try and be pointed in our responses. So let's look at two sides. You've got the demand side, which is where the customers come and apply to the banks. So there's a challenge of affordability there because of the high levels of indebtedness of the consumers in general, because of the high interest rates that we've seen, because of the pressure in terms of whether it's transport costs, food costs, petrol costs, you name it, electricity costs, the energy challenge we have in the country. So that's one part on the demand side of things. But as banks, I want to first and foremost put it up front that we are very committed to make the affordable housing sector to work in partnership with government, right? Now, there's a supply side of things. You can't sell houses which are not there. You must build houses. So the stock, the lack of stock that is appropriately priced, high quality stock, well-located houses, because location is important. If you put people far away, they use 40% of their income to get to work. So you want well-located houses which are affordable, good quality. Quality is important as well. So you must deal with the supply and deal with the demand. Obviously, where we play a role, obviously, as banks, we are entrusted with the responsibility to look after money which doesn't belong to us. It belongs to you. So we must be responsible with the money that we've been entrusted to look after. That's where the legislation comes in now, your NCA, National Credit Act, where we have to be responsible in terms of lending. So we would like to give money to everybody. The reality of the matter is we can't do that. We have to do affordability assessment and be responsible with credit that we lend money to people that can pay us back. So I think in a nutshell, to sum it up, we can't do it alone. we must work with government in terms of partnerships, because you need land to build houses. Government has got land. You need bulk infrastructure. There's big funding from municipality for that. You've got a TBSA that was here, whom I'm honored to have worked with them before. They do infrastructure finance. So you need partnership, and then obviously the banks. So all the mandates, land, bulk, internal services, top structure, we all participate there. I think I'll leave it there because I can say so much, there's a lot there, but we are committed as banks to work with government to fix these problems. Backlog is 3 million, so it's a lot, and it's growing every time.
Yeah.
Let me hold it there, give it back to you.
Yeah, that was a mouthful, and I think quite a number of the audience really concurs with you. There needs to be some partnership that's agreed, but what is important is he's putting the banks forward that they are keen to interact, but there are conditions and also there's regulation that actually enables or also restrict how they operate in the space. Now, the other question that I'd like to probably look at is that maybe let's go back to a bit up, take a forest view, not a trees view, at macro level. At high level, what are the things that need to be in place, or maybe possible solutions that we can put in place in terms of government expenditure? We know that we can leverage a lot from that. And other aspect that Mvuyo, that we can look at as a country and also the financial sector. We can still dabble between the financial sector and the public sector.
Yeah, thanks, Kivya. I think for me, a lot of the solutions have really been discussed in this room throughout the day. And I just want to highlight two important for me. And I think we really need to focus on the expansion of public-private sector partnerships. And I say seriously focus on that because oftentimes we gather in these rooms, you know, with role players, key role players, and we talk about the value of public-private partnerships. And then we leave this room and we go back into our silos and we don't execute on the values that we've spoken about in these rooms. And I think for me it is time that we seriously focus on expanding these public-private partnerships. It's easy for lenders to talk about risk-based lending and that we are governed by the NCA. It's easy for developers to pursue profitability. It's easy for government to talk about budget constraints. But knowing what we know, what are we doing to remove the stumbling blocks and that we act and we stop talking about the same things over and over again, you know what I mean? And I mean, we've seen some great examples of where the public-private partnerships really work. And John spoke a lot about this morning in the energy industry, in the transportation industry, in the education industry. We've seen it work. Why not in housing? Why not in housing? And so that's key number one for me. And I think the second point is Bruce and the good doctor as well have spoken about the affordability and the creditworthiness issues. We know those issues, and those issues will remain with us. We know, but what are we doing about it? And I know there's barriers to entry that you've spoken about that we're trying to address, but there's also a leaking bucket where data tells us between 5 to 10 years of property ownership. Apologies, I'm struggling with this, so I hope you don't mind, and I hope you can hear me. It's fine, thanks.
Yeah.
Where data tells us between 5 to 10 years of home ownership, there is a population that exits the market because of over-indebtedness. So it always feels like we take 2 steps forward and 10 steps backwards. So those are some, we need to, as a collective, focus on financial literacy programs. Bruce spoke about that. The banking sector can only reach to a certain point. Government alone can only reach to a certain point. We need to, as a collective, focus on empowering people with financial literacy programs. Then we can start to close some of the holes that we're struggling with.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great. Thank you, Vio. I think you spoke to a very important point, that market sometimes fails. In economics, we have that market fails sometimes. And we also talk about equilibrium, where your demand meets your supply. It can meet it at a higher level or at a lower level. And we have no time for lower level equilibrium. We need a higher level equilibrium. And that requires a lot from the state to intervene. And I think that's the message that is clear. Where the market fails, the state needs to really play a serious role. So it points to that, and that's a reality that South Africa fails. Vuyo, thank you very much for that important point. And I think what we can also speak about is we have only one department that looks after the interventions that government actually uses to intervene in this market. And that budget, as we've spoken before, it's very, very disappointing. And that we've got a growing demand, and the gap growing is also growing. But the support, the state intervention, I don't think it's well appreciated. But we have something, okay? We have something. Are we using it best? The little that we have, are we using it to its best? So my next question is, how can we best utilize these resources that the state has put forward as an intervention to address this gap? And I've got a colleague, Zaide, to respond to that question. Please go for it.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Gilly. I think from entry into the market, government has supported with housing subsidy, such as the First Home Finance, previously known as FLISP. I think this is an entry and a supportive anchor to the market to purchase their first home. Africans has benefit from the subsidy, but how do we accelerate it and scale it? So as a banking sector, we have incorporated and worked very closely with the National Housing Finance Corporation to embed the onboarding strategy of the First Home Finance into our banking strategies from a sales and onboarding perspective to encourage the market that qualifies for the subsidy to take it up. We also support it through our different platforms as banking sectors through thought leadership. And when we are able to speak about it, encourage and educate the market what the subsidy is about and what is available to support you to your first home finance. I think also another important thing, we continue as banks to work as partnerships mentioned by Dr. Madikizela and my colleagues on the side, Marissa and Mbuyo. We continue to collaborate with the NHFC to support the scale and the awareness of the subsidy and to support the affordable housing market in the entry to barrier. I think what was really plausible from government is the reconsideration around the first home policy. Some changes made in 2022 where the policy is not only for lending finance, it's also being used to pull for some of attorney fee costs and also the extension of using the subsidy for non-mortgage facility lending as well. And I think that is supportive to help transform the housing challenge that we have in South Africa with the backlog. And I think the subsidy really is there. I think a lot of us work together with the National Housing Finance Corporation and the government to support the scale of it and integrate it into our banking processes so that we're contributing and ensuring that the affordable housing sector is benefiting from being able to own a home. And that's our role that we play also through the housing literacy programs that we offer our consumers as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Colleagues, I'll ask you also to raise some points as we talk, as this is not a TV show. And I want you, as you have a point, maybe you interject a question, please, you're welcome to ask a question. And if I don't get a question, I'll ask you a question. I'll choose who I ask. All right, so amongst the other problems that you... Oh, there's already a question. Thank you for I asked for it. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm going to ask a very pointed question, and it's really to the traditional finance houses. Given the support that NHFC gives on the first home finance, how does that adjust or tweak your credit scoring model, if at all? Because my understanding is that without tweaking your credit scoring model, it's irrelevant, to have the subsidy programs. So is it a situation where government intervention allows you to tweak your credit scoring model? Probably not the best example currently, but if you look at a SA Taxi, for a very long time, they were successful because the credit scoring model was specifically tweaked to adjust for low income. Whereas your traditional finance houses would not have been able to finance, entrepreneurs in the lower segment. So I'm trying to understand how does that affect it, and do you tweak your credit scoring model? Thank you.
I think that's a very straightforward question. How does it help one to qualify better? Does it do anything? Who wants to go for it? Colleagues? Dr. Matikizela, please.
Thank you. No, I think you're raising a very important question. If you look at the triangle, right, at the bottom, you've got many people, we talk about going deep, broader development impact. That's where we must make a dent. Now, if you look at first home finance, it is a pro-poor subsidy. At the lower end, at 3.6 income per month, you get 169,000. That's the biggest quantum in terms of subsidy, right? So the subsidy from government plays a very important role in dealing with affordability. It addresses the issue of affordability. And there's a big opportunity for us as banks to really make a difference. That's why in the earlier panel, I asked a question about transformation, to say how serious are we about transformation, to change. I'm from the rural areas of the Eastern Cape in Transkei myself. I grew up there, so I'm talking about a market which I know and I understand, right? So in the tribal areas, take KZN, where you've got the Ngonyama Trust, for example, sitting with 3 million hectares of land. You go to Eastern Cape, it's rural, many provinces, Mpumalanga, Limpopo, there's huge opportunities there. So we have to then tweak our scorecards, right, to talk to the relevance of the market. What do we mean by that? So if you recognize 169,000, it's a down payment, it's a huge deposit. That in itself should already reduce the interest rate that we can charge, because it's still risking the risk for the bank. So huge opportunities there for us. The quantum of FLISP is about, call it, Bruce is here as CFO, 500 million, give or take. That's about the allocation per annum nationally. It was 463 million last financial year, so it must be up now. So that's the quantum of the subsidy, right? So we have to use that money responsibly and spend it responsibly where it is needed, which is at the bottom. So there's many case studies of assisted cleaners, right, who didn't believe they can own a house. Use case. A person who's doing garden services, a petrol attendant, security guard, and so on. That's a profile of the customers, which we have assisted. I mean, there's one house for 250,000 in Orange Farm. The person is earning 3.6, is a cleaner, right? So there are use cases where we've done this, but we need to do more. We need to scale it up. We must scale it up. So we committed, the opportunity is there, we welcome, want to participate, and make sure that we need to deliver a scale. We need big projects. Economies of scale are important. You can't do 20 units, 30 units there, and so on. You need scale, big projects. 25,000 units project, Gonubia, in KZN as an example. Kucha development, I don't know if it's taken off from the Eastern Cape. You've got your Savannah Hills, 18,000 units. Projects like that, at scale. Then we're serious about it, but then we need to work smart and partner. It goes to partnership. Municipalities must approve the plans quickly. Developers must come in, build houses that can be affordable, well located, 40 by 40 by 40. 40 square meter house, 40 kilometers away, 40% of the salary being used by the person. That's not sustainable. We need to do better. So it's quite complex, but opportunities are there. Town planning must come into the party. We need to, if you look at the NDP, National Development Plan, Chapter 8 of the NDP, talks to transforming human settlements. It's there on paper. Where we're not doing so well, it's on implementation, execution. We must execute faster, expedite execution of these projects, right? Otherwise, people are not going to take us seriously. It's just talk and talk and talk. Thanks.
Wow, that was an empirical response. And I think it it's an answer for many people who ask this question. And again, we want to applaud the NHFC that really they're doing a lot of work in that space, and we're benefiting, the community is benefiting a lot by those grants. So please don't take them away. Another question, then I'll move on to my panel again, please. There's a question here. Who's helping with the mic, please?
Right here, in the front here.
Thank you very much. I'm from Kocha Development Corporation. My question is for the banks around the implementing agents and the developers involved in social housing. Inevitably, 30 or 40% of the equity portion will have to be debt. And banks traditionally borrow against balance sheet. Are there products or innovative ways in which some form of limited recourse financing can be made available to enable the projects? Because, like we all know, it is quite a barrier to entry for the implementing agencies that are SHRA accredited. So it becomes quite a stumbling block to the development of social housing projects. Thanks.
Okay, all right. I think it's another straightforward question. Who's happy to tackle that one, please?
I'm happy to tackle it again. So just indicate that, so you're talking about rental, social housing, right? Rental. So again, there's subsidies from government there. You've got a capital restructuring grant. Last time I checked, it was 250,000. I know it's higher now. So that, again, is government coming to the party there to help. So there is social housing in inner city, your JOSCO, your SOSCO, the companies like that are the implementing agents you're talking about. Again, so we need those rental units because not everybody wants to buy. I might have a house at home in the Eastern Cape. I might just want a place to stay here, right? And not necessarily buy. So there is a market for that, for rental, social housing. Government regulates that through SHA. There's certain amounts of rentals you can charge per month, whether it's a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, and so on. So opportunities are there. Again, as banks, we've got many products, alternative building ways of technology, APTs, ways of building, which are quicker and faster. It's one of the ways we can intervene. Your 3D printing, there's many of these. Your agreement is there to approve this. NHBRC is there, the walk-up units and so on. So again, the opportunity is there. And we can do structuring like debt equity structuring. We can leverage on the grants from the government that I mentioned. There's Human Settlement Development Grant from the 31 billion budget from National Department. There's Urban Settlement Development Grants. There's MIG funding, as I mentioned. And then obviously as a banks, we can come with debt structure, equity structuring to make it affordable for the consumers. So there are models, financial models, which are there, which we have, which we tailor-make to be able to, pension-backed loans, for example, we take into account pension-backed loans, right? We've got a Builder Connect, which is a new innovative way of building to tailor-make to respond for the needs. So there's many products, more than 40 APTs, more than 40, many of them. So the solutions are there, the opportunities are there. We need to talk more, partner, structure things innovatively and creatively in a responsible way within what is allowed in terms of the law. So I hope, but there is a panel on affordable social housing later, a rental, after this, so we don't have to take too much from them. They will respond to some of the things there. Otherwise, then we take the spotlight from them. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no, there's bound to be overlap, but I think somewhat to a large extent, there was a good response to your question, ma'am. And somebody also mentioned about how also, I'm going back to my panel now, so you can put down your hand. We have red tape limitations and constraints in the property space, and the lower you go, the more challenging that becomes. I don't know what causes that, but I wish Salga was here, also maybe to speak for themselves. But anyway, the banks also have an idea that how can we deal with these barriers in terms of the registration. Sometimes it takes too long. And also just to have water registered on your property, if it's a new property, is an issue. Reconnections and disconnections are an issue, and getting the response at the time that you need. That also affects also how we quickly actually progress in that space. Stelo, can you maybe give us an idea, your views and experience in that area, how we can overcome such challenges?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think on my side, there's a gentleman, I think is sitting somewhere here in the front. I didn't get his name earlier on. He expressed some frustration around the process taking too long, whether it's going to council, whether getting plans approved on time. And I think maybe the starting point on my side is maybe just to ask the question to the audience. We don't need to answer it here, but going forward, if you look at what happened in China during the peak of COVID, they built a massive hospital that could take 1,000 beds within 10 days. So I'm not sure if we look at our development cycle, what are some of the limitations that can get us closer to 10 days? So I think as part of the things that we need to look at as a team, you can imagine if it's 10,000 beds, we take 100 contractors here to be part of that project. You multiply that, so the 3 million that we are talking about as a backlog, we can actually wipe it out within a year if we've got 100 contractors working on a 10-day cycle. Obviously, there's a lot of things, the quality of the material and other things that we can talk around. But I think one of the things that we really need to ask ourselves to say, if we want to transform the industry, how do we improve as stakeholders? So as stakeholders, I'm talking as are some of the questions that we ask, whether it's 30% own contribution, whether it's us looking at other options from a regulatory point of view to say government has chipped in with X amount of equity. How do we also, within the rules of the banks, also change a few things so that our appetite is actually improved? So I think as stakeholders on our side, the key is for us to also look at things that we can do, whether it's fast-tracking our processes as bank in terms of supporting all the stakeholders that we deal with, and also being a stakeholder as important as a bank in South Africa, we must be able to influence. So the influence I'm talking about, maybe I'll start on the government side. I think John did touch on it. One of the things that I was very intrigued about was the urbanization of, in terms of what's happening. We're seeing people moving from KZN to Cape Town. We're seeing people moving from KZN to Gauteng and all the various areas of the country. How do we plan better that when we go and put up houses in KZN, we also take along corporate companies, including the developers, to go and develop so that people have jobs, that they don't need to leave the areas and come to Joburg to look for opportunity, or Soweto or any other township. So I think we all have a bigger responsibility to influence on the government side in terms of planning to say, how do we design the towns that they can be self-sustained? It's not going to save the country great if we only have Western Cape and Gauteng and a few provinces working. We need every province to be a hub on its own. So I think the critical part for me, if we were to advise on the government side, is to say, let's make sure our planning is right, that we actually service the people where they are. And let's also make sure we pass regulations as a referee that enables the players to play without harming each other. And when the players do harm each other, how do we pull a stick and correct it? Because there's a lot of things, for argument's sake, if you look at preferential procurement, one can debate the issues happening around call it construction mafia, which is one of the points that we raise for government to look at addressing in various areas, is to say, how do we play a role, and also how does private sector play a role to say, if I need to employ 30% locals and have the players involved, how do I make sure I comply with that without necessarily waiting for government to come and police me? So I think overall, as players in the industry, we've got a role to contribute to the economy, but I think the bigger influence from a regulation point of view is to just removing those barriers. if to get council approval is going to take you months, that project is already out of this financial period. And I go back to my starting point to say, if China can build a hospital within 10 days, with all the great people that we've got in South Africa and the great entrepreneurs and the various organizations, surely we can be able to remove 3 million backlog in housing by partnering together. You can imagine if all of us were sitting there in that site now. You've got a good doctor here approving deals on the spot. You've got a developer also making sure that they order products. And you've got a supplier also sitting here that deliver the right quality product. You also have a quality controller that makes sure it's up to standard in terms of what we build in the industry. So I think we all have a big responsibility in terms of influencing and making sure that we just do the basic right. I think if I look at it, John touched on it earlier on, it's mainly centers around the basic. If you go to council, you need any rate clearance because you need to register the property at deed office. It should move. You should not be thrown back and forth around those matters. And I think all of us as partners have a big role in terms of influencing and making sure that we actually remove the housing backlog that exists in South Africa, not only in Sandton, across South Africa. So I think for me, that's the important area that we need to play on our side.
Right, that was comprehensive, and thank you. You touched a lot of partners as well. And I would like to ask, who stays in Steyn City? Here. Who stays in Waterfall? All right, okay. So the government has tried in its policy to put together a policy that will sort of integrate people to stay together despite of their income class or level, how much money you make. And they call that inclusionary policy. We just want to know maybe some views from the panel as well. How is that working currently? What are the challenges in implementing that? And is there any room for improvement? I'll ask Marisa to respond to that.
Thanks for that. So today we understand that we are currently facing a housing crisis, right? And South Africa's housing crisis attributes to the vast economic and social exclusion, which has inadvertently resulted in our current inequality of housing as we see it today. So government has obviously brought in the inclusionary housing policy, which in actual fact is there to close the gap around let's call it, those that can afford to buy in these affluent and housing, as you said, these waterfall estates and all that. So the inclusionary housing is basically, we've partnered with developers to say, come on board with the municipalities, to say, would you allocate part of your development to the affordable housing sector? And what that does and what that hopes to achieve is to bring the lower income earners and the lower middle income earners and bring integration into their world so that they could also have the benefit of being able to buy in an affluent and more well-located area, which will help us close the gap around that segregation that we currently have today. So whether that's a good thing for a developer, I'd like to hear from you as well, because I think there is some resistance as well from developers where they're saying they would have to, if they have to comply, they will have to forego some of the profitable, their profits. But obviously there's a bigger role to play in ensuring that there's no longer segregation and we're allowing people to buy into units where ordinarily they wouldn't be able to afford it, giving them equal access to housing that ordinarily they wouldn't have been able to afford anyway.
Yeah. I see the
Okay.
gentleman is standing up there.
Yes, yeah, no, just worried about the time.
Yeah.
I think discussion has been very insightful. I've also got a few questions that has been sent to my phone from the audience as well. And I just want to make a comment also on Steyn City. In fact, I was there yesterday. I know the developer very well. They've got a very interesting product which they're bringing out for city centre. And what they're doing with city centre, they're doing a rent-to-own product. So you would pay 15,000 Rand for a really good apartment, and after 2 years, that capital that you paid rent into would actually go into your equity of the sale. So it becomes an incredible buy. And I really think it's a very innovative type of product. And, you know, these are the kind of things that we kind of have to be looking for, you know, that you can start building up that equity level. For you bankers, it's a dream come true. There's some equity going into the deal. It's not 100% loans, that kind of thing. So I must say developers have been really, really innovative in terms of, you know, those kind of things. Okay, I've got two more questions before we go for our break. Gilly, so I'm not going to take over from you because... there was Bongi has asked a question. He said earlier on there was a suggestion that the city of Johannesburg could ease regulations to enable developers to produce units faster. What other processes can be eased to accelerate the provision of housing? Also, what capacity challenges need to be addressed collaboratively, that's what we're doing, collaborating, by the markets and the municipalities. Anybody want to comment on that? Or maybe, I think given that, I'm going to give another question, and then I think it might be good to do the wrap all the way around for everybody, because we are running out of time. On banks, what is the equity ratio to borrow which the banks are willing to fund the property developers? Last time, 2005, Absa Bank funded an owner versus bank ratio was 40-60%. That was 2005. I think that's changed quite significantly. So maybe I think just closing comments, closing thoughts. We between you and obviously lunch and refreshments, and so maybe the closing comments and thoughts around that.
Thank you so much. Very quickly.
Please go for it.
Am I audible? Is it on the mic?
Yeah.
Thank you. So I think very quickly, like I said, the opportunity is there. It's massive. The future is in affordable housing in terms of business. That's where the scale is. Remember the triangle. More people in millions are at the bottom. As you go up the income, I mean, it solves for itself. The higher you earn, it's easier for you to access finance. I want to just comment on the rural areas. I mean, massive opportunity there. If you just drive along N2, for example, you'll see beautiful houses that people are building for themselves, you know. So we just need to get involved, all the players, support there, and make sure that that economy is vibrant. We create jobs for the people there. We upskill the people, register those need to be registered with NHPRC, supervise, make sure it's good quality houses. We stayed in those houses for years. They've never fallen. They are being built properly, but we can support and encourage and pump money there and develop these areas so that we can make sure that we deal with the triple bottom approach. Inequality, poverty, unemployment, we must solve it. It's our problem. But the crime is an issue as well. Corruption is an issue. You can't have a situation where there's lawlessness. You can't have trucks being bent there and there and there and there. Where is the intelligence? We should know about these things before they happen. We must arrest people. Go to Botswana along the neighboring. There's law and order there. So we need to have law and order, not lawlessness. You can't have people being killed and this and this. How are investors going to come and put money in this country? So we need to govern. We must be firm. There must be law and order. We must deal with criminality, deal with corruption. There's a lot of stealing of the money. This construction mafia is about corruption. So let's engage all the stakeholders and make sure that we put the interests of this country ahead of everybody else. Execution, implementation, then we can solve it. Thank you.
Amen.
Thanks.
So your last words, one of us, maybe just quickly as well. I think that's the opportunity we have. You can touch on some subjects that we probably left as well.
Yeah, I think just the last comment on my side around the process. I think that's where we really need to get it right. There's developers who are brilliant in their job in South Africa that can develop very quickly. how do we make sure that across board, whether it's applying for a loan in a bank or any other players, that we actually enable them to develop as fast as possible. So I think even on the government process, whether it's local government or the various municipalities, that's something that we need to find a way to get it to be automated and much more simple to be able to do business. And then the last point, obviously, there is other challenges where there's small developers that have been developing for many years, but they might not be recognized by the regulator. We've had those conversations to say those players must be incubated so that they can also become large developers and really help us out in terms of the backlog. The point that you mentioned about loan to value, it varies across the bank. If I use a rule of thumb, probably on the commercial side will range anything from 70% to 80%, but it can vary, meaning you need to contribute the rest as a developer. And there's various ways, obviously, to skin a cat. If you're looking at a farm, we might look at applying a higher haircut than that. So there's various ways we can look at it, and affordable houses, we can go to 100%. So that's a different market that we can look at from a loan to value. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks.
There you
Ida,
have it.
your final
Thanks.
thoughts?
I think today this discussion was great. I think for us to look at a 3 million rand backlog and only 31 billion assigned to budget for housing and to close the gap, that's massive. All of us as a collective work together to transform the housing challenge in our country and house the nation. That will then stimulate growth, economic growth in our country by closing this gap. Housing is a basic need, and I think as a collective working together and collaborating and committing to transform the housing challenges is critical. That we will then also reap the benefits of economic growth within our country, investor attraction, but more importantly, solve some of our economic and social challenges that we're faced with. And that means all of us as industry players in the ecosystem coming together and working together, expediting different housing programs that needs to be delivered, mixed housing programs, social inclusion housing programs, to support the basic living need of citizens of this country. And I think we all have a role to play to transform and support, and I think all of us have to be committed, but us as banks are definitely committed to support and be a key player in the ecosystem. Thanks.
Maria, your last
Just also in
word.
closing, the doctor has said the affordable housing market is the main market, actually. And as banks, we very commit every second month in a committee, and we debate and we discuss industry challenges and how can we influence credit policies, and everybody is paying attention. We just need to act. It is the main market, and yeah.
Great. Marissa?
Yeah, so just closing, we have seen that property ownership is where wealth creation lies. And there's so much opportunity in the title deed programs where municipalities are sitting with title deeds, and we can give back. And by giving back and partnering with organizations that can help give back those titles, that will then unlock wealth so that people can in actual fact get finance on unencumbered properties, and they so be able to contribute to the economy and make it meaningful for themselves as well. Thank you.
Great.
Thank-
Gilly,
thank you,
your
Marissa.
final wrap, Gilly?
I think my panel deserves an applaud, guys. Don't you think they did a great job? Thank you very much. And they are around for the whole day, even tomorrow, so they're available even individually to engage and participate in the other sessions. So I encourage you to interact more with them. And once again, thank you again, and thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful, great.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I think put your
Yes.
hands together again for the panel. They're going to open up their wallets. They're going to give you your money, their money for property. Yeah, they are. These are the people that you talk to. Engage with them,
Thank you, sir. Well
engage.
done.
Okay, ladies and